Naomi Carter was deadheading her marigolds when she noticed the hammering. It was coming from the far corner of her property, just past the old cedar fence her grandfather had built by hand in the early 90s. She shaded her eyes from the morning sun, stepped off the porch, and walked down the gravel path, feeling the crunch under her sandals. When she rounded the chicken coop, she saw it, a man in a navy polo shirt, clipboard in one hand, hammer in the other. He was nailing a metal notice to the outside of her fence. "Can I help you?" she called out. The man didn't look up. "Just posting a compliance alert, ma'am, nothing personal." She stepped closer, brushing dirt from her gloves. "Compliance with what? This isn't HOA property." The man finally turned. Mid-30s says, clean-shaven, sunglasses, and that overly neutral voice you hear in waiting rooms, and scripted apologies. "Your parcel borders Cider Ridge Estates," he said. "As part of Phase 5 integration, adjacent lots are now subject to perimeter beautification expectations." "Phase what?" He tapped the sign with his pen. "Notice of non-compliance, vegetative clutter, improper fence style, and non-conforming land use required remediation within 14 days to avoid escalation procedures." Naomi pulled off her glove. "You do know I've lived here 23 years, right? This land doesn't belong to Cider Ridge, it's unincorporated." "That status is under review," the man said. She stared at him. "You can't just make a private parcel part of your neighborhood." He handed her a glossy pamphlet. It had the Cider Ridge logo on the front, a winding path, a fountain, and a family walking hand in hand. Inside was a section titled, "Buffer Zone Compliance Protocol for Community Harmony." "All bordering lots," it read, "must maintain visual consistency with Cider Ridge Estates Phase 5 design language." Design language? Naomi looked at her yard, her mother's rose bushes, the crooked but healthy fig tree, the rain barrel by the gutter. Her place wasn't messy, it was lived in. Real. "This is my land," she said. "You can appeal," the man replied. "But refusal to comply may result in property assessment under our enforcement clause." Then he walked away, leaving the notice flapping in the wind. She didn't go inside right away. Instead, Naomi stood in the same spot for nearly 5 minutes, watching the man drive off in a white truck with tinted windows. She turned the notice over, nothing on the back, no contact name, just a printed phone number and an extension that sounded more like a hotline than a person. By noon, she'd made 5 calls, none of them answered. One went to voicemail, one rang indefinitely, the third gave a robotic message. "Thank you for contacting Cider Ridge Compliance. Please submit documentation through our online portal." She didn't have a portal, she didn't even have an account. Later that afternoon, Naomi walked her fence line with a notepad. Her fence wasn't brand new, but it was sturdy, cedar posts, hand-set. The garden wasn't out of control, the chickens were quiet, the compost was neatly contained. It was the same land she'd tended for years, but now, someone had decided, it didn't look right. At the southeast corner, she found something new, a white wooden stake, driven into the dirt behind the coop. It had a small pink ribbon tied around it, and 3 letters scrawled in black marker, "CRP Cider Ridge Property." Her stomach dropped. She'd heard rumors from Greg next door, that the HOA was pushing for more amenities, a jogging path, a greenbelt trail, but she thought they meant the empty lot to the west. She didn't realize they meant her acre. At sunset, Naomi sat on the porch steps with a pencil in her hand, and a notepad on her lap. The chickens had gone quiet, the sky was turning that cotton candy orange you only get in May, and the notice was still nailed to her fence. She didn't rip it down, not yet. Instead, she circled the phrase, "enforcement clause," and underlined it twice. Then she wrote just 2 words beneath it, "Call Kara." Naomi Carter didn't just live on the land, she belonged to it. She didn't say that to sound poetic, she said it because it was true in the most practical sense. Her family had held that 1-acre plot on the edge of town since 1976, when her parents bought it with money scraped from second jobs and small loans. They'd built the house from the ground up, no contractor, just stubbornness, sweat, and weekends. Her father, Harold Carter, laid the foundation with hand-mixed concrete. Her mother, Evelyn, planted the original fig tree, that still stretched toward the sky, like it had something to say. Naomi was 19, when she came home after her mother's funeral, and promised she'd never let the land go. She didn't marry, she didn't move, she stayed, taught 3rd grade at the same elementary school for almost 30 years, and when she finally retired at 52, she didn't take a cruise or downsize to a condo. She put up a rain barrel, built a second coop, and started canning again. This isn't just land, she'd tell anyone who asked. It's a story I'm still writing, which made that metal compliance sign feel more like a threat to her name than to her fence. After the man in the polo left, she spent the night in her father's old recliner, reading the property deed line by line. It was dry stuff, easements, legal coordinates, terms of sale, but she read it like scripture. She needed to remind herself, this is yours. The deed was clear, parcel #0173A, 1 acre, unincorporated, zoned residential agricultural, purchased March 11, 1976, never absorbed by any HOA, yet the notice on her fence claimed her property was visually non-conforming within the Phase 5 shared perimeter buffer zone. She'd never heard that phrase in her life. Greg Santos had, though. She called him the next morning. Greg lived just one lot over, a retired electrician, with a quiet voice and hands that always smelled like sawdust. His yard was cluttered with old tomato cages and solar lights that only worked half the time. He'd been getting warning letters too. They want our back ends, he told her over coffee, for their walking trail. That's what this is. Naomi raised an eyebrow. They want to run a trail through our yards, right where your coop is, he said, right where my garage sits. They're trying to make it look like we're the ones out of line. She walked the property line again that afternoon, clipboard in hand. Another stake had appeared, this one planted beside her compost bin. Same white wood, same pink ribbon, different letters, GZB. She took a picture. By evening, she'd filled 6 pages with notes, fence lines, marker locations, quotes from the HOA flyer, even a screenshot of her county zoning map, which clearly marked her plot as unincorporated land. Then she opened a drawer in the kitchen, and pulled out an old business card, tucked behind a recipe for blackberry cobbler. It read, Cara Lynn, investigative reporter, Channel 7 local news. Naomi had met Cara 3 years ago at a school fundraiser. Cara was covering a story about school garden programs, and Naomi had given a talk about composting with 3rd graders. The two had stayed in touch, exchanging a few holiday cards, and the occasional text about local ordinances, or backyard snakes. She hadn't expected to meet her, now she did. Naomi texted a photo of the fence notice, with a short caption, I think they're trying to take my land, you still chase bad stories. Cara's reply came 5 minutes later, every day, I'll bring my camera. That night, Naomi sat in the grass beneath the fig tree, the same one her mother had planted decades ago. She pressed her hand to the soil. It was dry but steady, old, but alive, the kind of ground you don't surrender for someone else's park trail. By Wednesday morning, there were signs, not metaphorical ones, literal signs, black and white corrugated plastic, staked into the yards of anyone not towing the Cider Ridge line. Naomi spotted the first one on Greg's property. Notice, property under compliance review, perimeter zone G failure to meet visual and structural standards may result in administrative action. It stood 2 feet tall, right next to his birdbath. A second one sat in front of Sasha Whitmore's place, down the lane. Sasha was barely 30, a single mom with 2 kids and a half-finished garden of raised beds and zinnias. Naomi hadn't known her well, until that day, when she saw Sasha standing on the porch, arms folded tight, eyes scanning the sign like it might catch fire. This can't be real, Sasha said. I'm not even in the HOA. You're not, Naomi said. Neither am I. But the sign said otherwise. That afternoon, Naomi walked the loop around her side of the neighborhood. She counted 8 signs total, all of them on older properties, all on the edges of Cider Ridge. Every sign included the phrase, perimeter compliance, visual continuity initiative. They made it sound official. They made it sound like these homes were broken, disruptive, like the people inside were squatters on their own land. Back at home, Naomi opened her mailbox and found something worse. A newsletter, heavy cardstock, triple folded, bearing the HOA logo and titled Cider Ridge Community Progress Bulletin. Page 3 had a section titled, Non-Compliance Register, Visual Buffer Audit, and there it was. Lot 0173A, Carter, Naomi. Visual disruption, aged fence, agricultural storage, unpermitted structure, coop, non-matching vegetation. Her name was in bold. Her land was labeled a disruption. She turned the page. More names. More properties listed under vague violations, non-conforming trees, inconsistent facade tone, decorative clutter. She took a photo and sent it to Kara. The reporter replied within minutes. Can I film tomorrow? At 10 a.m. Sharp, Kara Lynn pulled up in a dusty Subaru with a Channel 7 magnetic badge on the door and a cameraman in tow. She wore jeans, boots and a denim jacket with a press pass tucked into the collar. Her handshake was firm, and her eyes locked in fast. You weren't kidding, she said, reading the sign still posted by Naomi's driveway. Neither are they, Naomi replied. They filmed for nearly 2 hours. Kara got B-roll of the fence, the compost bin, the rain barrel, and Naomi sitting on her porch flipping through the newsletter. She interviewed Sasha too, and Greg. What would you say to the people behind this? Kara asked, crouched low beside Naomi's tomato patch. Naomi looked straight into the camera. I'd say stop pretending a flower bed is a threat to your neighborhood's value. I'd say this land fed my family for generations. It held our stories, not just our stuff. You want to build walking trails, don't do it by pretending I'm the problem. Kara blinked, nodded once and lowered the mic. That'll make the cut. That evening, Naomi noticed the car, a black SUV, parked 3 houses down. No one got out. It didn't idle, it just sat there, its tinted windows aimed toward her house. She didn't panic. She walked calmly inside, and called Deputy Cheryl Knox, a friend from town, someone she'd known since they both ran food drives for the school pantry. There's a vehicle watching my place, Naomi said. Might be nothing, but it might not. Cheryl said she'd swing by. 10 minutes later the SUV was gone, but a new sign had appeared overnight. This one zip tied to Naomi's gate. Final warning, Section 8C breach pending legal transfer procedures may be considered if property fails to meet Phase 5 requirements by the end of quarter. Legal transfer. Naomi stood still, breathing hard. Then she walked inside, found her yellow notepad, and wrote just 4 words. Let them try it. Naomi didn't sleep much that night. She sat in her kitchen with the porch light off, flipping through property records on her old laptop, squinting at zoning maps and parcel history. What she needed was a trail. Any clue that this Phase 5 compliance zone wasn't just a buzzword, but a calculated strategy. At 2:13 a.m., she found it, tucked deep inside the county zoning agenda from last October, buried halfway through a PDF, was an item labeled, Agenda Item 14, Pathway Extension Proposal, Cider Ridge HOA. Status, deferred pending border parcel negotiation. Naomi blinked. Border parcel. She clicked the footnotes. There it was, in black and white, parcel 0173A through 0179B identified as potential transitional easement corridor for recreational infrastructure expansion. Her land, Greg's land, Sasha's. The entire stretch of homes with compliance signs had been quietly grouped as potential trail zones, not sold, not approved, but flagged for future use, and that was enough for the HOA to start pressing. They weren't enforcing rules, they were laying the groundwork to push people off the map. The next morning, Naomi drove straight to the county zoning office. There behind a smudged window, labeled Public Records, Inquiries, sat a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a name tag that read Renee Ford. Naomi slid her a printed copy of the October agenda. I need to know who submitted this, she said. Renee adjusted her glasses. You own one of these parcels. 0173A. Renee tapped her keyboard slowly, frowning. That's not HOA land. I know, they think they can take it anyway. Renee raised her eyebrows. 1 second. She disappeared into the back. When she returned, she had a thin folder and a tighter voice. Looks like the request came from a private planner, consultant attached to Cider Ridge's board. No resident outreach, no hearing notice, just a bundled packet slipped into the tail end of the fall agenda. Did it pass? Renee shook her head. Deferred, but not dismissed. They'll bring it back, probably with stronger language next time. Naomi felt her chest tighten. You ever see something like this before? Renee leaned forward. Once, back in 2009, HOA in East Haven tried to absorb non-member lots for a parking expansion, wrote letters, issued fines, called it aesthetic enforcement. What happened? Lady called the newspaper, showed up with photos, neighbors and her father's deed. County killed it in 48 hours. Naomi smiled slowly. I might know someone with a camera. Back at home, Naomi found Greg pacing his driveway. They left a notice on my truck, he said. Said it's visual debris. It's a 72 Ford. They're pushing, Naomi said. Feels like they're circling, he replied, waiting for someone to move first. Naomi showed him the zoning file. Greg stared at the map for a long time. I planted my apple trees where they're planning their trail, he said finally. Think they'll walk through them? Not if we stop them. That night, Naomi opened her inbox to find an email from Kara. Segment airs tomorrow, Channel 7, 6:30 p.m. Also, you're not gonna believe how many messages we got from people with stories just like yours. Naomi sat down at her kitchen table, beneath the framed photo of her parents planting that fig tree in 1983. She felt something shift. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was all of theirs. By the time the segment aired on Channel 7, Naomi had already fielded 5 calls and 2 texts from people she didn't know. The news clip ran just under 4 minutes. It showed her holding the compliance sign, flipping through the HOA bulletin, pointing at the fence line. Kara's voiceover was sharp but steady. A retired teacher, Naomi Carter, says her property, legally outside Cider Ridge HOA, is being targeted for visual violations, but documents from the county suggest the real motive may be tied to a future development plan. The phrase future development plan lit a fire. By morning, the video had over 20,000 views online. Greg called first. Sasha's fence got tagged again, this time with a red ribbon. Naomi didn't even blink. They're escalating. I heard from my cousin. Greg added. He's a contractor. Said Cider Ridge reached out last year about trail-friendly lot conversions. Said it sounded shady, so he passed. That afternoon, Naomi met with Kara again. This time with Renee from zoning tagging along. They set up inside Naomi's kitchen. Renee pulled out a folded document and laid it flat on the table. A color-coded map, parcel zones in pale orange, proposed trails in dotted green, an overlay showing amenity zones where current lots were marked for potential acquisition. A large arrow pointed straight across Naomi's property. What is this? Kara asked. It's what they submitted in December, Renee said. Never passed. But clearly, they're acting like it did. Naomi leaned in closer. 3 lots were marked in red. 0173, 0174, 0175. They're calling us buffer properties, she said quietly. And treating you like temporary residents, Renee replied. Later that night, Naomi opened the HOA's public forum page. Most of the posts were fluff, sunset photos, plant swaps, tennis signups, but buried halfway down, in a thread titled Phase 4 Trail Progress Update, she found a comment from Miles Dunleavy, the HOA president. As we proceed with our vision for a unified recreational loop, it's important we address visual and structural inconsistencies at the neighborhood's edge. While these properties may currently fall outside formal inclusion, cooperative compliance is expected for the betterment of all. Cooperative compliance, that's what they were calling this now. She clicked his profile. It listed no real information, just the title community director, and an HOA contact email. But his profile photo showed him standing in front of a podium with a banner behind it, Future Forward, Expanding Together. In the background, a rendering of a park, right where her coop currently stood. The next morning, Naomi walked the fence line again, and found something new. Not a ribbon, not a stake, a spray-painted X on her compost bin. Orange, about 2 feet wide. No tag, no explanation, but someone had come onto her land. She took a picture, then another. Then she texted it to Kara and Greg. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You're going to make this harder than it has to be. She stared at the screen. No name, no reply option. She stepped back from the bin, and looked around. No cars nearby, no one watching, but the message was clear. Back off, or it gets worse. Naomi didn't back off. She went inside and printed the map. She circled the 3 red parcels. Then she circled all the other lots she'd seen with compliance signs. By the time she was done, there were 12, all sitting on the outer edge of the HOA zone, all lined up like dominoes, between the homes and the undeveloped lot behind them. And now, finally, it made sense. They weren't cleaning up the neighborhood, they were clearing a path. By the end of the week, Naomi's kitchen table had become a war room. It wasn't intentional, it just happened. Greg brought over copies of old HOA bulletins. Sasha dropped off photos of her fence, now marked with both a warning and a spray-painted dot. Renee from zoning sent over notes she wasn't technically allowed to share, but felt someone ought to read. Even Deputy Cheryl Knox stopped by. "I can't make it an official report without a suspect," she said. "But I've logged the trespassing call. Let me know if that message comes again." Naomi nodded. "It will." They all knew that. The next day, Kara's news segment aired a follow-up. This time, it wasn't just Naomi's story, it included Sasha's toddler, playing in the garden beside a sign that read "Out of compliance, decorative hazard." It showed Greg's Ford truck, now cited twice for inconsistent street-facing appearance, and it showed the zoning overlay, zoomed in, highlighted, explained. Kara's voice was crisp. "Documents show that Cider Ridge HOA may be enforcing non-existent rules on land they don't control, targeting homeowners near a proposed recreational expansion. County officials confirmed no annexation has been approved." That sentence changed everything. Naomi's phone rang within minutes. The first call came from Mr. and Mrs. Tran, who lived across the gravel road. "They threatened to fine us for our doghouse," Mr. Tran said. "Said it was a violation of uniform structures, but we're not in the HOA." The second came from Walter Sims, an older man Naomi hadn't spoken to in years. "They posted a warning on my garden shed," he said. "And I don't even live in Phase 4. By nightfall, Naomi had a list of 15 names, 15 homes, 15 non-members, all suddenly flagged as visual disruptions, all located along the border where the trail was proposed. She pinned the list beside her zoning map. The pattern was no longer subtle, it was precise. They were being removed piece by piece. Greg suggested a meeting, not just a conversation, he said. A statement, something they can't ignore. Naomi agreed. She called Kara. "We're thinking Saturday, my backyard, just the people they've tagged." Kara didn't hesitate. "I'll bring 2 cameras this time." Saturday came bright and clear. Naomi set up folding chairs. Sasha brought lemonade. Greg brought extension cords for Kara's equipment. By noon, 23 people had gathered beneath the fig tree. Kara began filming at 12:15. She went person to person. Mrs. Tran spoke about her grandkids being told they couldn't draw on their driveway with chalk. Walter explained how he was cited for an unpermitted tree swing he'd had since 2002. A woman named Keisha broke down in tears. "I just wanted to plant sunflowers," she said. They posted a notice calling it agricultural intrusion. Each voice added weight, each story matched the next, and all of it led back to Miles Dunleavy and the Cider Ridge board. When Kara turned the camera off, the backyard was silent. Then Naomi stepped forward. She held up the newsletter, with her name listed under non-compliance. "I didn't start this fight," she said. "But I'm not walking away from it either. They can't redraw the rules just because our houses don't match their fountain plan. This is our land, our names, and now we're drawing the line." Someone clapped, then another, then everyone. That night, Naomi walked the fence again. No new signs, no fresh markers, but she knew better. The silence just meant they were preparing something bigger. The power went out at exactly 2:34 a.m. Naomi wasn't awake when it happened, but her dog, Jasper, began barking like a fire had started in the kitchen. She shot up, heart pounding, and flipped the switch beside her bed. Nothing. No fridge hum, no porch light, no security camera blink. She stepped outside and scanned the neighborhood. The rest of the block still had lights. Her house was the only one dark. She called the power company first. The technician on the line was polite but confused. "There's no outage in your area, ma'am. Your meter's showing manual disconnect at source." "You mean someone shut it off?" There was a pause. "Looks like it was marked for maintenance." She stared at the phone. "What kind of maintenance happens at 2:30 in the morning?" "We didn't schedule anything." Naomi hung up and dialed Deputy Knox. By 3:15, Cheryl had arrived with a flashlight and 2 thermoses of gas station coffee. They walked the property together. Behind the shed, Cheryl found it. The main power line had been neatly disconnected from the utility pole, cut with a clean, deliberate slice. No burn, no mess, just a quiet sabotage. Cheryl snapped photos. This wasn't kids. This was done with the right tools and the right knowledge. Naomi's jaw tightened. "Are you filing it?" Cheryl nodded. "Now it's criminal mischief and tampering with public utility infrastructure. That bumps it to felony territory. And if they try something else, I'll be back tomorrow night." By morning, the air was thick with tension. Sasha texted that a strange man in a vest had walked through her yard pretending to inspect sprinklers. Greg found his mailbox open with a note inside. "Your truck isn't historic, it's an eyesore." At noon, Naomi received a certified letter. This one wasn't from the HOA, it was from Pembroke Mediation Group, a third-party firm tied to community arbitration. The letter said Naomi had been scheduled for visual harmony resolution proceedings for failure to participate in community integration discussions. She was to appear at the HOA clubhouse the following Tuesday at 9 a.m. Failure to appear would result in a loss of collaborative rights and potential reassessment of lot contribution value. Naomi read it 3 times. Now they were inventing financial threats. She slid the letter across the table toward Kara. They're trying to wear me down, one form at a time. Kara nodded. This isn't just pressure. It's deliberate confusion. They want you two tangled in paperwork to keep fighting. Naomi's voice was calm. Then we're gonna untangle it, publicly. That afternoon, Kara aired another update. This time, she led with the power cut. The footage showed the disconnected line, Cheryl giving a statement, Naomi holding the fake mediation letter and reading aloud, "Loss of collaborative rights. I didn't apply to a club. I live in a house, on my own land, that I pay taxes for." Kara ended with the overlay of the trail plan and a clip of Renee confirming, "There has been no zoning expansion approved. The landowners are being misled." The piece went viral. Local Facebook groups lit up. One post read, "If this is what an HOA can do, we need to start asking where the line really is." Another, "That fig tree lady's got more backbone than half our city council." That night, Naomi didn't sit in the dark. She turned on the generator, lit the porch lights, and made a full pot of coffee. Then she took out a thick marker and a blank yard sign. In bold black letters, she wrote, "My land, my rights, not your trail." And she staked it right beside the original notice, where the wind could flap both signs side by side. This time, she dared them to take it down. Naomi didn't sleep the night before the meeting. She spent the evening printing copies of her deed, the zoning maps, the county agenda, and the photos of signs, stakes, and spray paint. She placed them into clear plastic folders, one for every seat she hoped would be filled. She booked the Meadow Hill Community Hall, the only neutral space big enough to fit a crowd. Kara secured a media permit and promised full camera coverage. Cheryl agreed to attend in uniform, just in case anything got rowdy. By 6:30 p.m., every folding chair was taken. Sasha brought cupcakes. Greg passed around printed timelines. Renee set up a small projector and connected it to Naomi's laptop. Even the trans came, so did Walter. So did 12 other residents marked by compliance actions over the past month. At 6:55, the door opened, and in walked Miles Dunleavy. Pressed blazer, polished shoes, clipboard in hand. He was flanked by 2 HOA board members, who avoided eye contact with everyone. Miles took a seat in the front row. Naomi didn't flinch. At exactly 7 p.m., she stepped up to the microphone. "Good evening. My name is Naomi Carter. I live on parcel 0173A, and tonight, I'd like to tell you about how an HOA tried to take my land, without buying it, without voting on it, without even asking." She clicked to the first slide, a photo of her fence, then a sign, then the newsletter with her name. "This is what they call a disruption. This is a rain barrel, a chicken coop, and a fig tree planted in 1983. The next slide showed the zoning map. "This is how they plan to absorb our properties into a private trail project, without approvals, hearings, or consent." Murmurs rose in the crowd. Then Naomi played a short video, Kara's clip of Renee confirming no zoning had changed. Renee stood and added, "No HOA or private planner has the right to enforce anything outside their legal boundaries, not through signs, not through threats, not through pressure." Greg followed with photos of spray-painted X's. Sasha spoke about her toddler's playground being flagged for removal. Cheryl read a statement about the power sabotage, and how it now involved a felony investigation. And then Naomi stepped back up. "They wanted to build a trail, that's fine, but they decided to bulldoze us first, quietly, legally, on paper." She turned to face the room. "They thought we'd be too small to stop them, too tired, too polite, too divided. A beat, but here we are, together." Applause filled the hall, even some of the board members clapped. Then came the moment Naomi had prepared for. She walked down the aisle, and handed a folder to Miles. "These are certified copies of my deed, county zoning maps, and the easement history of my parcel. You'll find no clause, no boundary, and no permission for your plan." Miles didn't speak, but his grip on the folder tightened. Naomi faced the crowd again. "I'm not looking to punish anyone, but I won't be erased either, and I won't let this happen to the next homeowner who plants a tree, or hangs a wind chime, or paints their door the wrong shade of red." Applause again. Stronger, louder. Kara's cameraman swept the room. Naomi stepped back, voice calm. "This ends tonight." Miles stood. "This meeting is non-binding," he said. "The HOA will conduct its own internal review." Cheryl stepped forward. "And the sheriff's office will conduct ours. Along with the county. You'll be hearing from us soon." Miles paled, then left. 2 days after the town meeting, Naomi opened her front door to find a white SUV in her driveway. But this time, it didn't belong to the HOA. The emblem on the side read, Travis County Code Compliance Division. Out stepped Inspector Jolene Parks, a no-nonsense woman in steel-toe boots, and a county badge clipped to her vest. She shook Naomi's hand without ceremony. "I saw the meeting footage," she said. "Our office has received 7 complaints in 2 days. Something's off. I'm here to see what's real." Naomi led her along the fence line. They walked the perimeter of her lot, inspecting the compost bin, the coop, and the flagged areas. Jolene took pictures, measured posts, studied the sprayed X on the bin. "This isn't a code issue," she said. "This is a power play." By noon she was gone, but not before promising to file an immediate report with the county planning board. The next morning, Kara dropped off a hard copy of her latest segment. It featured interviews from residents across the buffer zone. It showed drone footage of the lots in question, with graphics highlighting the non-member properties, and their suspicious alignment with the proposed trail route. Most importantly, it ended with a clip of Inspector Parks saying, "There is no legal basis for what's happening to these residents, and we're investigating how enforcement tactics were used outside HOA jurisdiction." The HOA board called an emergency session that night. Naomi didn't attend, but the minutes were leaked within hours. Miles had attempted to double down, arguing for community vision and forward planning, but 2 board members openly called for his resignation. One even demanded an external audit of the HOA's funds. The motion passed. Miles Dunleavy stepped down that night. No press conference, no apology, just a resignation letter stapled to a clipboard and a line that read, "I acted in what I believe to be the neighborhood's best interest." Within a week, Travis County issued a cease and desist on all Phase 5 compliance actions. All notices, signs and warnings had to be removed. All complaints tied to non-HOA parcels were voided. Inspector Parks filed a secondary report with recommendations: the mandatory transparency in all HOA to county proposals, official notification to all landowners before rezoning discussions, fines for unauthorized use of regulatory signage outside HOA limits. It wasn't just a win, it was a new rulebook. Naomi got a call from Renee at zoning. "Your parcel's record has been formally updated," Renee said. "We added a legal note. No future annexation allowed without owner consent and public hearing." "Can I get that in writing?" Naomi asked, smiling. "It's already in your inbox." Greg's truck stayed in the driveway. Sasha's kids planted a new garden. The Trans painted their mailbox bright yellow, just to prove they could. Naomi replaced the My Land sign with a wooden plaque that read, Fig Tree Lane, unincorporated, unbothered. The day she hung it, neighbors dropped by with lemonade, pie, and congratulations. It wasn't a party, it was something quieter, a return to peace. At sunset, Naomi sat on her porch and watched the light settle through the branches of her mother's fig tree. No signs, no SUVs, no clipboard men, just Jasper asleep at her feet, and a warm breeze pushing the curtain through the window screen. The fight wasn't something she'd chosen, but the victory, that was hers. Naomi Carter stood at the edge of her property, and looked down the fence line one last time. It was a warm Saturday morning, no meetings, no reporters, no notices nailed into cedar, just sun, soil, and the soft chatter of birds in the fig tree above her. Her boots pressed into the grass, her father once cut with a push mower. Her hands brushed the fence, her mother helped repaint every spring. And in that stillness, Naomi realized something. The fight was never just about fences, it had been about voice, about dignity, about saying, "Not this time." It had been 3 weeks since the county ruling. Cider Ridge was quiet now. The new interim HOA board had met twice without incident. The signs were gone, so were the threats, the false notices, the visual compliance teams, and Miles Dunleavy. He'd moved out of state, no one threw him a farewell gathering. Greg's tomato plants were in full bloom. Sasha's garden beds now featured hand-painted signs from her kids, "Be friendly," and "Grow loud," sat between rows of carrots and zinnias. Even Walter, who'd once threatened to sell and move to Florida, was spotted repainting his shed a proud shade of hunter green. And Naomi, she was exactly where she'd always been. One evening, Kara returned for one final interview. Naomi offered her a glass of iced tea, and a seat beneath the fig tree. "No Mike this time," Kara said. "Just a visit." Naomi nodded. "Good, I'm tired of talking to tripods." They laughed. Kara glanced toward the compost bin, and the chicken coop, still standing strong. "You ever think it would get this far?" Naomi shook her head. "No, but I knew what they were doing wasn't right, and I knew I wasn't crazy for wanting to be left alone." Kara leaned forward. "Would you do it all again?" Naomi didn't hesitate. In a heartbeat. Later that week, Naomi received an envelope from the county. Inside was a small certificate. No ribbon, no seal, just typewritten words. "Travis County Historical Parcel Recognition awarded to Parcel 0173A, for legacy land preservation and public civic contribution." It wasn't flashy, but she framed it anyway. The neighbors held a small potluck that Sunday. Not an HOA event, just folks with folding chairs and pasta salad. Someone brought a speaker. Greg manned the grill. Sasha taught her kids to skip stones in the drainage ditch out back. At one point, Naomi stood and raised her lemonade glass. "To fig trees," she said. Everyone raised theirs. "And to fences that stay where they belong." That night, Naomi walked Jasper along the edge of her property. The air was quiet, the stars were out, her porch light hummed softly behind her. She stopped beside the old marker, the one Renee helped verify, the one that started it all. She brushed off a few leaves and stood still. Then softly, she whispered, "We held the line, Mama." And she had. Not with lawyers or lawsuits, not with money or threats. She'd held it with truth, with neighbors, with a voice that refused to go quiet. And in doing so, she hadn't just saved her land, she'd saved something much bigger. The right to stand firm, even when the signs tell you to move.